what the state legislature has done with RTD as far as its organization and allowing us the innovation and really oversight has been onerous, if not restrictive, to the point where sometimes I wonder, gosh, what is the function of the board of RTD? But with
to
the
be
current
puppets of the legislature.
well, as the current governor and the current state, unfortunately, one-party rule has not allowed the voice of dissent.
So the RTD district is 2,300 square miles. It encompasses the entire Denver metro area. And who runs it exactly? We're going to find out. But first, subscribe and like our channel. Click that little bell icon for notifications. And find the Devil's Advocate podcast on your favorite listening app. The one, the only, the lovely and talented Kathleen Chandler, who is a member of the board of RTD. Exactly what does RTD stand for?
Well, it stands for Regional Transportation District, but it also sometimes is referred to as Reason to Drive.
I'll also put another one that I liked when my time there was Road to Denver, because all the little trolley lines meet in one place and there's one winner. So if you live in Boulder and you want to go to Golden, you go to Denver. You're in the tech center, you want to go to the airport, you go to Denver. It sure seems like a Denver-based interest, but I like Reason to Drive as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's too big. Let's just start from there. Your description of it, the 2,300 square miles, is just too big. Regionally, it should be much smaller because it serves a much smaller district, a much smaller population, really, which is more of Denver-centric and a little bit of the outlying communities. But indeed, way out east, way out south, way up north, it
RTD's
shouldn't.
district goes to the Continental Divide, which was my district when I was represented there. And you got people in Allens Park, this little town, paying RTD taxes. And they're never going to see a bus ever. So they've been doing that since the early 70s. All right, let's go. For those who don't know, I learned a lot when I was elected to the RTD Board of Directors. I really learned how crooked government is. I learned how RTD is not about moving people, it's about moving money. And I also learned that people at RTD and the whole system of RTD doesn't really give a rat's ass about transit-dependent people for which they were responsible to give transportation, but are happy to build trolley cars so guys in Highlands Ranch don't pay parking when they go to a Rockies game. It is I say it and people have a hard time, but I believe if there's such a thing as systemic racism, RTD is a perfect picture of it. We tax poor people with a regressive sales tax to buy toys for guys who already have cars, when the whole idea of RTD, when we voted on it in the 60s, it started from the Urban Mass Transit Act, but then through the 70s, was to give people who don't have cars mobility. Do you think RTD does a good job giving people who don't have cars mobility?
It's getting better. Let's just say that.
You have turned into a politician.
Well, you know,
Let me try the question. Do you think RTD does a good job giving transit-dependent people mobility?
No, but it is getting better. And I have to say that it is getting better because we have had a new pilot program that started last year. It's actually a full program now called the Access-A-Ride and then the Access on Demand. Those are our two paratransit organizations that work to help with disability. I'm really strongly an advocate for the disabled community. Of all the people in the whole wide world that are never going to drive, it's the blind population. So perhaps we should have some kind of mobility option for blind people to get them from point A to point B. Because if they are actually getting to a job, that is helping them in their being a productive member of society. But it's also just good for them mentally and physically. And so of all the people, trying to get a handicapped accessible ride for a blind person is what I'm really about right now.
Well, you think about any person who doesn't have mobility. A person who is dependent upon RTD for all of their transportation is a person who will be stuck on the bottom rung of the economic ladder. A guy with a $500 used car has so many more advantages. If you live if you live on RTD, you've got to live where you can walk to a bus line. You have to work where you can on that bus line or some connection. You spend hours a day doing connections compared to somebody who can just take a Lyft or an Uber.
Right, which is why the Access on Demand is such an innovative program, and I'm trying to expand that program. It is actually a ride-hailing app through RTD, where as a blind person or a person who needs some kind of a ride point to point can actually hail an Uber, a Lyft, or a taxi. And then RTD gives a subsidization for that ride. And so we cap it. We have all these rules. I'm trying to change that to be much more flexible, but really also it's innovative. It's bringing in technology. It's helping people get that mobility that they need, but it's also servicing those people that need point-to-point service, to your point. Not that they can walk or have to navigate broken sidewalks or icy sidewalks or any of that, either as a blind person or a handicapped person. So we are working towards that innovation, but as you know, government is slow to do anything, much less be innovative.
And only people's lives at stake, but RTD also is in love with empire building. I found that with my years there, that there is this thing that, no, we must do it. We must provide the transportation. And there's no better example of that than steel wheels, that we're going to take up right-of-way that we could be using for general purpose lanes or bus lanes or HOV lanes or anything else. And we're going to put rail down on it. And that rail sits unused, except for every 15 minutes, some trolley goes on it. And yay, look, it's a trolley. In the meantime, we're snarled in traffic. Whereas living up in Boulder, the one part that RTD did right was the Boulder to Denver bus run on an HOV lane. So you can buy into the HOV lane and get out of traffic. If you want to be part of the solution and give somebody a ride, you get a free way out of the traffic. And it's the fastest, most flexible, because you, unlike a rail car, you can take a bus off and go back on. It might be the most successful bus route in the nation. So why in the world are we still looking about building trolley cars, this 200-year-old contrivance, in a city of technology and Ubers and Lyfts? Why not build capacity, build infrastructure where we all can use it?
Well, a lot of it, unfortunately, has to do with the climate agenda. Our wonderful governor, Governor Polis, is really quite frankly hell-bent on having a climate agenda, and that does not mean using anything that has to do with wheels that are made of rubber or tires. It all has to do with trolleys and trains and all of that great stuff.
I wonder how many times he takes the bus to work.
I get it. I understand it. And that has been my frustration, is that out where I live, which is out on the eastern side of Aurora, Arapahoe County, there is never going to be a train out to where I'm going. So the only solution is bus. And to me, that's much more flexible. It's much more ability to just put people on it and change the routes and go around traffic and potholes. By the way, potholes are a big problem, even for our buses specifically. But all of that to say, we need much more flexibility, and trains are absolutely not it. So between the climate agenda and the unflexibility of it, I agree. I'm not as maybe as negative as you are on RTD, because I do see some innovation that's starting to take place.
I am very bullish on helping those without transportation get it. But I don't see a system that is 95% government subsidized when you include the capital. 95% government subsidized to give that subsidy to people who have money, who have cars. In my world, we take that subsidy, and I know this sounds crazy, we give it directly to the transit dependent, maybe in the form of some sort of voucher or transit voucher, and they can choose to ride the bus at full fare, or take an Uber, or take a cab, or heaven forbid, use the money to buy their own car. For a world that says we care about the poor, RTD doesn't give a flying F about the poor.
Well, and that is one of the things I am working towards with hopefully a coalition within the board, is to change that access on demand where we have a lot more flexibility and we're not subsidizing the the ride itself. We're giving that to the person, to empower the person. So we absolutely need some innovation and flexibility. We need to embrace technology, which RTD is terrible about. So I'm hoping, I'm part of the Operation Safety and Security Committee.
They're very good at embracing technology as long as it's 200 years old or
Well,
older.
true. And so the point of that is we're trying to institute some new technology portions within RTD. We're doing tap to pay, which I cannot believe we're in 2025 and they don't even have tap to pay.
That is for people who don't know. You go onto the bus and you just tap your card instead of throwing money at them.
Exactly, because if you're trying to get younger people to ride the bus, they're never going to carry money. Plus, frankly, it's a little off-putting to have to put money or do any kind of a transaction within a machine when you've got your back to everybody. It's a security issue as well. So
we don't do it for Uber or Lyft or even taxis anymore.
I know.
No, it's just amazing. All right, so 1998, I ran a campaign against something called Guide the Ride, which was another boondoggle. But then a few years later, they came back with Fast Tracks, a worse boondoggle, which was supposed to be about $4 billion. It's now pushing $8 billion. We were supposed to have double-tracked track all over. Now we have a lot of single-track. We were supposed to be not at grade, because that's very dangerous when you have a train running where the cars run. They were supposed to be over. A lot of that has happened, has been changed to at grade, which means we have more accidents, more deaths, all of which we predicted when this happened, and there's not enough money. So Longmont was promised to have this by 2017, and not a shovel has been turned. My suspicion is you're going to see some sort of last minute, oh, look, we got the money for it, so that the governor can say, now we can move towards front range rail. I don't think there's a chance in hell he can pass a tax increase for front range rail if anyone has paid attention to the debacle that is Fast Tracks.
I agree. However, I don't think that the governor agrees. And that's the big problem right now. The governor has really made it a point to consistently talk about his front range passenger rail. And right now we have this memorandum of understanding between us, and we're working with intergovernmental agreements to try to start that process. But we are, as you noted, nearly 10 plus years behind of when it was supposed to be completed. It's estimated to be billions of dollars. It's just, you're right. It's not.
It's fanciful.
It's fanciful.
So when I was on the board, Karen Banker, who is somehow still back on the board, I haven't quite figured that one out. She did not like the idea of competitively contracting out services, which saved us 40%. In fact, the light rail that is being built is now being built because half the service, bus service, is contracted out. So I keep asking, if you want to finish up this silly train to Longmont, why don't you just contract out the rest of the bus service? That means you put it out to bid, and the lowest company does it. Same buses, same routes, same uniforms, same time schedule. The savings is on work rules. And private companies can do things that the union contract can't do, like have part-time jobs and have somebody in the morning and somebody in the evening. Why not just contract out the rest like all of Europe does?
Okay, well, we actually had this discussion at the last meeting just a week ago, and Transdev won the contract, or was the competitive winner of the contract, and unfortunately, they were the only bidder. So part of it is Chris Nicholson, Karen Banker, a bunch of them are not excited about Transdev. They feel that they're not doing a good job, that there's too many complaints, but it's really, as I debated Mr. Nicholson on our meeting, it was all about unionization, and he didn't like the fact that they were not unionized.
But they can unionize.
I understand.
A lot of privates are unionized.
But he's also very concerned that it isn't part of RTD, so we're not holding them accountable. And he went into this big discussion about profits. And I actually had to chime in and tell Chris, once again, Mr. Nicholson, that profit is not a bad word, and that because a company is making a profit doesn't mean they're evil.
Well, and so when you go to Office Depot to buy the fax paper for RTD, is that also?
Yes,
what's silly about this is the goal is to provide the most service for the least money. And if that's the case, contracting is how you do it. By the way, Margaret Thatcher had a problem when she not just contracted out service, but privatized and sold it off. She had people going around the world advertising what their RFP was going to be and letting them know that they could bid. So you have to do that, and also you have to enforce the contracts. That's why you write a contract, and if they act badly, they get punished for it. So if there's any failure with contracting, it ain't the contractors, it's Miss RTD.
Well, I 100% agree with that. In fact, that's one of our biggest discussion items this last time was the fact that we are not getting a competitive bids because we're not out there soliciting the right companies to bid. And there's a lot of people out there that says, oh, Transdev is just going to get it. And we cannot allow that. We need to be competitive in our processing. And so I agree. That's a problem.
It's the same crowd that doesn't want to save money at RTD, but is also pushing for yet another bailout tax increase. Does Karen Baker ever ask about me? Because we had a lot of sexual tension that you might not be aware of.
I would call it tension, and it's still there.
Oh, I have never met an angrier woman. Oh, well. Let's keep going.
Okay, now you know what? I'm going to have to listen to Karen. I like Karen. She's a very lovely person. She and I have worked on many projects together. I enjoy her friendship. We disagree, but what's so fun is that we can disagree, but we aren't disagreeable. So I would hope that
she is a barrel of laughs.
Yes,
she's a very light-going person. Goes through life lightly. All right, let's keep rolling. The legislature, when I was there, was like, no, we can't let directly our elected board members there. We need people who are under our thumb to do our command. It was Miller Hudson back in the 80s who brought forward an initiative to make these seats elected. They should be elected. What do you think about turning them back and taking away people's right to vote? To you out of office and me out of office.
Yeah, well, that is currently, unfortunately, what the governor has signed legislation in last year to have this accountability committee that is RTD. So there are all of these community members. There's a few RTD board members, a few RTD past board members, and everybody's getting together to determine the fate of RTD.
Yes, it's called death by committee.
Yeah,
it's the same thing they do with MIS studies, major investment studies, and also they work backward from a predetermined conclusion because you don't go to these meetings as a community member unless you want the change.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll see. I mean, our Chairman Bouquet, he's doing a great job, from what I can tell, on this committee, kind of holding the line. But we fought against a lot of the legislative changes that happened this last legislative session. One was that they took away the right for RTD to be a petition on. We're the only group within the whole entire state of Colorado that has lost the petition on right. So if you are there's nobody running, and you decide to petition
you mean
on
a write-in ballot?
Yes,
write-in.
Write-in ballot. That is no longer available for an RTD member. That actually got the ire of a lot of people because at least I think 2 board members that are seated were written in. I spoke out against it. We all spoke out against it. But
what I find so funny about this, and then let's switch gears. The people down at the legislature who are screaming most about a threat to democracy from these fascists are the ones who took away write-in candidates for RTD and want to take away people's ability to vote directly for democracy. They are taking away democracy at the same time they're screaming about it. What a Saul Lewinsky tactic of claiming your enemies are doing what you are actually doing.
I 100% agree with that. I think that what the state legislature has done with RTD as far as its organization and allowing us the innovation and really oversight has been onerous, if not restrictive, to the point where sometimes I wonder, gosh, what is the function of the board of RTD? But with
to
the
be
current
puppets of the legislature.
Well, as the current governor and the current state, unfortunately, one-party rule has not allowed the voice of dissent. So
keep the fight up. If you enjoyed that conversation, by all means, click one of these other great programs. We have the best conversations with the most fascinating Coloradans. And subscribe to our channel. Just click down below and hit that little bell button too. You don't want to miss a single show.